Everyone, welcome to this wonderful sunny Salt Lake. Hopefully it will be warmer even. Let us start our meeting. I'll call this meeting to order officially, and let us start the meeting with the Pledge of Allegiance by Commissioner Warlow.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Just remember the live broadcast of this meeting can be seen on youtube.com/UtahDOT. And hopefully we'll have thousands join us in a minute. We would like to excuse Jason Davis. He's at the committee meeting this morning. But we're going to start the introduction of the commission first, and we'll go to the UDOT family. Commissioner Gardner, would you please start us from to the left? Yes, please.
Good morning. My name is Natalie Gochner. I work at the University of Utah and happy to serve on the Transportation Commission. I represent Region 2.
Good morning. My name is Jim Evans. I also serve on the Transportation Commission representing Region 3, and I live in Orem. Thanks.
Morning, Lou Kramer, Commissioner at Large. I live in downtown Salt Lake and certainly appreciate all the great services being done by this marvelous commission. Not so much the commission, but the UDOT family. We are fortunate to be recipients of the great service that you do.
Wayne Barlow. I represent Region 1, which are the 6 northernmost counties in the state from Box Elder down through Davis County. I live in Cache Valley and or Fish Haven, Idaho.
My name is Donna Law. I'm a commissioner at large, so I get to represent the entire state, and my home is in Cedar City.
Good morning, Kevin Van Tassel, Commissioner at Large. I live in Vernal, Utah.
And my name is Nagi Zanadi, SDS, as from sunny and warm St. George. And I forgot my coat this morning and the gloves. Carlos, would you please introduce the UDOT family?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Carlos Braceras with the Department of Transportation, and we'll start with Terry, go to Heather, communication guys, then we'll come over here and do our back and forth, okay?
Terry Newell, Deputy Director, Planning and Investment.
Brent?
Graham Potter, Communications. Matt Parker, Program Manager. Ron Clayton, Region 3. Ron White with Operations. Ron Wells,
Well, we were going to
Just the UDOT.
We're going to do the UDOT first. Sorry, Commissioner. Carmen.
Ryan Adams, Region 2. Chris Peterson, Park 4. Dan Hewitt, Program Development. Feel like I'm in the family, but I'm not actually.
We could adopt you, Andrew.
Matt Swab, I'm with the Departments. I'm a public safety coordinator.
And I would like to also recognize our dear partners from the federal government, Ivan Marrero and Brigitte Mendel. Thank you for being here. Let us start with the first item of the agenda, which is public hearings and public comments. If you come into the podium, please state your name, state your capacity, the service that you render for your community, and speak to the mic, please, closely you can. Thank you.
Bend over there a little bit.
To make sure that, yes, thank you.
It is awesome to be here this morning. I was told that if I cut my hair to look like Carlos's, I could get more time at the mic, and so we'll see if that works. But actually, I'm Dean Cox. I'm a county commissioner from Washington County. I am actually on quarantine right now, so I'm not really here.
Okay.
I had a bone marrow transplant about 5 weeks ago, and it went really, really well. I have a hard time staying away from people and staying away from work. But I wanted to give the commission just a very brief update on the great things that are happening down in Washington County. And of course, UDOT has been very active down there. One of the places that we've been expending a lot of time, energy, and resources with each other, the county and UDOT, is on the Northern Corridor. The Northern Corridor is a road that was promised to Washington County when the Washington County Lands Bill was signed by President Obama in March of 2009. We've made significant progress in partnership with UDOT the past 2 years as we've began looking at ways that we could do that in an environmentally responsible way. We've met monthly with all of the different stakeholders, Fish and Wildlife, DWR from the state of Utah, UDOT, the BLM, and for the first time I really feel that we've made significant progress. Now, using progress and Fish and Wildlife in the same sentence is sometimes a difficult thing to say, but I am happy to report that over the past 6 weeks, 8 weeks, we have made significant progress in tying down a lot of the definitions, and I feel in narrowing the scope of some of the alternatives that are being considered for the road. Of course, we're now in the NEPA process, and part of the NEPA process is determining alternatives. We really have preferred alternatives, and there's a couple of them that work really well, but we have to consider alternatives that do not go across the Desert Tortoise Preserve. And I think that if we don't consider an alternative out of there, that we'd be subject to a legal challenge later as the roadway makes progress and we get a record of decision. But I know Rick is very up to date on this. This is on your agenda as item number 10. But this is and has been an expensive endeavor. I recognize and appreciate that, and I appreciate the assistance of UDOT and the progress that we've made to date. Where we're at is we've basically used up the funding that was initially allocated. The county commission has passed a resolution for another $632,000. I really feel that it's important that UDOT help us finish this. Washington County is one of the fastest growing areas in the whole United States as well as Utah. By 2065, our population is going to be over 500,000 people. On any given weekend, we have 229,000 people in Washington County, and about 50,000 of those are visitors from the Wasatch Front who are fleeing this cold weather for the beautiful weather that we have down there, and visiting places like Tuacahn, right, Lou?
Absolutely, Commissioner. Thank you for that endorsement.
You're welcome. Lou and I serve on that board together. So we're at a pivotal spot right now. This whole process has been really enabled by the attitude of the current administration in Washington, D.C., where we've been able to make progress that I feel we couldn't have done otherwise. The timing is critical. We would really like to stay on schedule so that we can get a record of decision before mid-January of 2021. And to do that, we have to stay on task. And so thank you for everything that you've done to help us and partner with us. This is a road that will benefit our entire area. and our economy. And we're now the 5th largest county and the 5th largest economy in the state of Utah. We're slated to pass Weber County here before very long. So anyway, thank you for all that you do, and I'll sit back down and shut up. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Dean.
Sure good to see you back, Dean. Thank you. Thank you.
By way of disclosure, Dean and I were involved in some form of the Northern Corridor 30 years ago, where we both were young and had a full head of hair. Time has passed fast. Thank you, Dean. Thank you very much. Any other public hearing? Public comments?
Good morning. My name is John Larson. I'm with Salt Lake City. I'm the transportation director there. I just wanted to come and just express, I guess, some positive sentiments about this new process that has been made available for local governments to nominate projects for TIF transportation and transit and active transportation projects. I think it's an extremely positive development, and I think as to have that opportunity to partner with the state to be able to implement some of our growing backlog of projects in order to keep up with the tremendous growth that we're experiencing in the capital city, so that we can have a truly sustainable, vibrant, multimodal transportation network to support that growth. We'll take all the help we can get. You'll notice that we were so excited about this opportunity that we submitted a pretty long list of projects. We think that they're all very worthy and needed projects, but I think we have realistic expectations. But I do just want to say how great it's been to work with UDOT. The staff, I know it's been a tight turnaround for them to go from the legislative authorization to actually coming up with the prioritization process and the screening and all that. They've been great to work with. So anyway, that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Go ahead, please.
John, I just want to thank you as a resident of Salt Lake City for the forward-looking vision you have, and I think our new mayor is really, really a huge addition to making these things go forward. So more and blessings to you. Look forward to further good successes in the future.
Any other comments? This portion is free. Please come forward. Speak and state your mind. Well, seeing none, I'm going to the next item then. Thank you. Let's see, Ivan, you have the floor.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman and Commissioners. I'm Ivan Marrero, Division Administrator for the Federal Highway Office here in Utah. Pleasure to present to you this morning. I have 8 items to bring to the Commission's attention today from the federal side. And thank you, Heather. I'm going to start with audits. So our office is always checking and auditing different aspects of the federal aid program here in Utah. And I want just to make you aware of the results we have from our most recent audits, 3 of them that have been performed. And we'll start with a single audit. A single audit basically is required to be done on any agency that receives $750,000 or more from the federal government. And it's not just the federal program that gets audited. It gets basically every aspect of federal funding gets audited, and it's done by your auditor's office. It's called a single audit. I'm sure you're all familiar with that. And just wanted to report that when we get the report, we look at the federal aid program side of the portion of the report, and basically for our last audit on the federal aid program side, there were no adverse findings. So just wanted to report on that. The other audit is we call it the federal aid billing transaction review, and this is something that Our division does, we coordinate, well, that second bullet should say done in coordination with the, basically with your controller's office. And we take a sample, we sample different billings that we get into our office to make sure that there's proper documentation and the items are eligible for federal participation. And in our last round of reviews, basically we found that all the transactions were eligible, accurate, and substantiated by proper documentation. Again, excellent results. And the last one is the, wanted to mention to you from an audit side or review side, is this one called the, we call them IPERA and IPERIA, basically it stands for Improper Payment, Elimination, and Recovery Act of, basically federally required or mandated audits or reviews. And this is where Federal Highways will hire a consultant, and these are nationwide reviews. So we hire a consultant to perform these reviews nationwide. This year, or this past round, Utah was selected as one of the states that will be subject to this review. And it focused on the payroll, employee payroll. You know, when Utah inspectors and engineers are working on a federally funded project, they charge those hours to us. So basically, this audit or review focused on the payrolls, make sure that they were accurate and substantiated. And again, they found that everything they looked at was the word, documented and properly accounted for. So. You know, I've been with Federal Highways for almost 30 years now, and to see these number of audits come in as clean audits is just incredible. I've never seen that before. Usually when these reports come in, we have to spend a lot of time and effort going back and correcting the items they find, and I have not had to do that here in Utah yet, so which is great, and it's really credit to the financial controls that are in place here in Utah, and the excellent work done by your controls office. So I, again, want to recognize them for that. And this is simply amazing from my perspective. Okay, let's talk about money now for a second. We do have a notice of funding opportunity for the Surface Transportation System Funding Alternatives Program. This is the program that's out there to help states explore different funding methods aside from the gas tax. So the application deadline is April 15th, and just for your information, you know, Utah already applied for this program, and they received a $1.2 million grant to help them with the ROC program, and they've also, in the last round, Utah submitted 2 more applications, both related to the road user costs. So I don't think this has been a decision made on that. But again, just the new round coming around, so hopefully we'll get more applications from Utah on this. The high-risk rural road special rule. So this is a rule that's out there that basically requires that if there is an increase in the fatality rate over a 2-year period, that then the funds be set aside for safety projects on rural roads. So Utah was one of the 9 states where there was an increase over a 2-year period. Basically, if you look there, I think it went up from 1.2 to 1.34. So what this means is that Utah will have to spend $1.3 million on safety-related projects on rural roads in the state this coming up year. Just so you know, even though they were subject to this special rule, overall, Utah's fatality rate is the 5th lowest in the nation. So it's overall we're doing great. It just happens that under the rules for this program, we saw an increase. Let me see. We did get, since we had our appropriations bill that passed this year, we do have full obligation limitation that we were able to distribute to the state. So this week back in January 24th, we distributed the $240 million to Utah for the program. and I keep going backwards. Another program that's part of that appropriation bill was the highway infrastructure program. This year they added, or they made charging, corridors, charging station or corridors with charging stations eligible for this funding. So in addition to construction of highways and bridges and tunnels and transit safety improvement projects, Utah can use, if they so desire, this money for these corridor, alternate route corridors. So, and also for bridge replacement and rehab and the Appalachian Development Program. Those are the different funding categories under this program. So the numbers are, I think overall total for the first set, there is 6.8 million, which is distributed by different areas. You can use it anywhere. Then for the urbanized areas with the population and all that. So those are the numbers. For bridge replacement and rehab, we have 8.4 million for a total of $15.3 million. So, and since we don't have any Appalachian mountains here in the area, we don't get any money for that. Finally, just this week we were notified that Utah received a discretionary grant for a truck parking program, truck parking project. This is something that Utah applied for back in 2012. And initially they were not selected. Apparently whoever was picked for the program maybe didn't come around and spend all the money, so the money was available, and we got a call. Can Utah spend the money? If we give it, can Utah build a project? We give it to him. Of course, knowing Utah, or Brian, Brian said, yeah, we can build it. So, the money will be made available to Utah to go towards this project. It's to basically either build a new truck parking facility or expand the existing truck parking or rest area and truck parking facility on 80 in Echo Canyon, which is, if you've ever driven there, it's definitely needed because there's not much out there going eastbound. So, and these funds will, we'll see how good Utah is about getting projects developed, because they got to get it ready to go by August of 2020. So knowing Utah, they will definitely get it done. So, and that was all I have for you today. I'll be glad to answer any questions.
Any questions from others? Good job. Thank
right.
you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We certainly appreciate our relationship. That's
Yeah.
great.
Thank you. You guys make my job very easy. Thanks,
Yes,
Ed.
go ahead. There's a question. Hold on.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Thank you for that report on the audit. That is really unusual not to have any findings.
Very unusual. Yeah.
And I think we appreciate that check, and I'd like to give the kudos out to the staff of UDOT that handles that. Certainly makes our job easier, so thank you for that report.
Like I said, I was just amazed when I saw the results. You always expect when you see those audit reports coming through, okay, what am I going to have to deal with now? And it was just nice to see. So thank you.
Thank you. Well, Carlos, with the 3A plus, 340 million and the grant, so we should just call it quit and go home and spend it.
Well, you've actually already spent that money.
I knew he was going to say that.
It's already in your STIP.
Well, okay, the meeting continues. Item number 4 rather, UDOT scoreboard. Chris Peterson and Rob White will present that.
Commissioners, appreciate the opportunity to give you an update on our program this morning. Of the 634 projects that you have authorized, within the next 60 days, we'll advertise another 80, and we have 14 to advertise within the next 60 days. So right now, it's what you might call a crunch time as far as getting our program out, and so far our teams are doing an amazing job. Since the July 1, the beginning of the fiscal year, we have advertised 102 projects totaling some close to, I'll round this for Commissioner Kramer, to 1.5 billion. And we're on a 90% performance on delivering those on the schedules that we have told you that we would do. We're pleased about that. Our goal is 85, so we're happy about that. Let's see here. This last month, we've advertised 28 projects. It's a long list. If you look through that list, you might see some that you know. The 28 projects total approximately $60 million worth of value. They're all over the state, and the interesting thing is there's not a large, if you want to call it that, large project in here. They're all significant projects, and they all add up to a lot, and that's a good sign of the work that our teams are doing to get out the bread and butter projects that we need to do to maintain our program and our roadways. So we're pretty pleased about what we see here for this last month. I'll show you a chart here in a second that'll tell you what we have in front of us. So this chart highlights what you would see, and let's see if I can get the mouse to work. So in this area, this is where we are right now. We like to advertise our program in the winter months so that the contractors can be ready in the summer months to get on the ground and be running without delay. And so you'll see that we have several projects that are coming up here in March that we'll be advertising, April, and so we can get the program out. And so the blue are projects that we still have yet to advertise. The green are projects that have advertised on time. We do have, like we talked about, that 90%, the 10% that are a little late for various reasons. And our teams are working on those to get those advertised as soon as they can without undue risk. Okay. Yeah, go ahead.
Can I just ask a question?
Please.
And I should probably already know this, but once we advertise a project, how long is that open for the contractors to bid on?
Typically 4 weeks.
Okay.
Okay, typically
So-
4
so
weeks.
it's-
Now,
It's all really a tight turnaround then.
it is, and then after those 4 weeks, then usually we'll have a contract in place, and but it takes, on average, 2 months before they're out working on the project after we open their bids.
Thank you.
Okay.
Do we communicate back this timeline to the people that are involved, the local communities, or?
Yeah, they're involved. In fact, when we have a local project where the locals have money in, say a Wasatch Front project, there's something on the agenda today for a Wasatch Front project. Those cities that have money in that, before we award the contract, we actually communicate with them and make sure they're comfortable with us moving forward since they have money involved in the project. So they do not understand those timelines, and then typically we're doing work in their cities, so we have our public involvement folks work closely with the cities as well.
Thank you.
This is we've added this in case you ever have questions. This gives me a bunch of data that I can answer if you have questions. So I'm not going to go through that, but this lists all the different types of projects we have, and then we can sort through them and filter them to help us manage the program and know which projects are on time, which ones are late, which ones are coming up. So this is a list of all the projects that are coming up that we talked about. Okay, so right now we have 158 projects under contract, and you can see that we're still 1.2 on what we have remaining, and 800 million, sorry. I wish it was 800,000, that's a small number. So anyway, we're talking $2 billion worth of work that we have under contract and partially paid out or yet to pay. I'm just going to skip over the contractor payments. What you'll see, well, I'll talk really quickly. In December, you'll see that our payments are not very high during the winter months. That's because most of the work slows down. And you'll see that we always see this trend. It's a cyclical trend. Our payments will start going up now that we get into the spring and the summer months. And this is a chart that we always talk about to demonstrate how well we are doing estimating our projects as compared to how the bids come in. And you can see the last 2 months on the far right that it's tight. And what we're seeing is with the market, as tight as it is, it's difficult for us to truly understand the market and where it's headed. But you can see that we're still keeping pace with it, and we're not behind, if you want to put it that way. Our folks are doing a really good job at estimating the contracts to make sure that we have a good idea. Sometimes when we have those estimates and we look like we might be a little bit behind, we might bring an item to the commission to help us make sure that we have enough money in the budget to move forward with the project, and we always do that with your approval. So, any questions about the update on the program? Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Chris.
Commissioners, Mr. Chair, it's good to be with you this morning to talk about zero fatalities and what we're doing with that.
Let me see here. Get back to the, no, here we go. So let's look at where we are currently with our 0 fatalities. And as you'll see as we scroll down, the crash data and the serious injury data is we lag for a few months, and so you're not going to see a lot for January and February as we go down, but you will see the fatalities that we have. Hold on, wrong way. Here's where we are. Say our current number for fatalities, and it shows here it's 27, but it's actually 26, and I'll tell you why that is. There was a very tragic incident down in Region 4 on I-70 where a double fatality was discovered from some folks that had been missing since October. And we believe that that actually happened many months ago, but they were just discovered because they were in a very remote area down on a very steep cut. And so that's why that actually will be in last year's numbers rather than this year's numbers. And we counted it as 1, and it was actually 2. And so the real number right now is 26 for this year. So
Off the road
it was,
accident?
yes, they had run off the road and were down in a very deep cut area where they weren't found for many months later, unfortunately. So very tragic and very sad situation, but that's the reason for the discrepancy there for the numbers.
Rob, are you gonna mention where we were last year and what that means?
We are about right on where we were last year.
Well, in terms of, last year we had reported, I think in the last commission meeting, 246.
Right, we had 246, and so that's going to be bumped up to 248. If you go back one, yeah, you can see there, currently we're 246. That hasn't been updated yet. We'll be at 248 for last year. These graphs are here. They don't show a lot of valuable data yet until we get about 2 or 3 months in, so you'll start to see that at next commission's meeting. Our internal injury rate, as you can see, we are doing quite well on that. We're well below our target on that for our internal folks. And then our equipment damage, as you've seen for the last several months, and you notice in the winter months we tend to go up when we have more people out on the roads. We're well above our target there for damage, property damage, and equipment damage. So something to keep our eye on and keep working on, striving to bring that down. Quickly, there was a question that came up last commission meeting about our fatality rate. We reported on the fatalities, but there was a question, I can't remember who it came from, but somebody had a question on the fatality rate. And so I'm gonna show you a series of slides here talking about what our roadway fatalities have done over many years. And this goes all the way back to 1940. And if you look at our fatality rate in 1940, we were up around almost 12 to 13 people per 100 million miles traveled. And so that's a pretty stark and a pretty impressive trend to bring that down over the years. Of course, if you think back to 1940, I don't know if any of us were around at that point, but there weren't seatbelts in cars. Guardrails were either non-existent or a very primitive design. And we've come a long way in those many years, and that's attributed to car manufacturers, that's attributed to state highway officials. Those that have gone before us have begun to bring that curve down. So, hold on. So let's look a little closer back from 2000, and there's still been a lot of progress made even since 2000 in our fatality rate. And we were up above 1 point, and my eyes aren't as good as they used to be, but I think that's 1.7 roughly. And that's come down on a fairly consistent basis to where we are. And this is our number for last year is 0.75, which is the lowest that we've ever been. So that's less than, that's 3/4 of a fatality for every 100 million miles traveled. So that's one of the top 5 in the country. Well, we don't know yet because all the data is not released, but as of last year, we were in the top 5 in the United States as far as fatality rates. So there we are, and that's a really promising trend, and we're excited about all the work that our folks here in the department have done. Our citizens in Utah are being safer by buckling up and doing those things that reduce this rate significantly. Any questions on that?
Rob, this is very impressive. What is the impact of the big trucks? We have more, I mean, like double the number of big trucks on our roads than our neighboring states because of our location. How many of these involve big trucks, I guess is my question. How many of these fatalities?
A fairly small percentage of them involve big trucks. I don't have that number right off the top of my head, but it's a fairly small number of fatalities involve big trucks. Now, we've looked at this in the past, and many of them, how they come in on the report is if a truck was involved in some way, whether they caused the fatality or not, it's reported. And I want to say it's something like 20% of all these involve a big truck in one way or another, whether they were at fault or not.
And how many of these accidents were on our, our major freeways and the off-roads, such as those two that were discovered in that?
That was actually on I-70, so that one was a major freeway also. But I don't have the numbers exactly on what percentage of these. I could bring that and get into a little bit more detail next time if you would like, talking about where these are located and how many of them are. As a percentage of vehicle miles traveled, our freeways are actually some of our safer roads. Because even though there's a lot more vehicle miles traveled on those roads, those tend to have a lower accident rate than our surface streets, where they're, for example, where you don't have a separated highway, you have people running head to head. So they're statistically much safer than our local roads or our non-interstate roads.
Thank you.
I think that truck drivers, being professionals as they are, tend to be a lot safer than an awful lot of us traveling the roads.
Having driven one of those trucks before in the past, I understand. I was much more careful behind the wheel of that truck that weighed, 20 tons than I was behind the wheel. Not that I wouldn't be safe anyway, but behind the wheel of a small sedan. You could probably say that generally, yes, but that's the case.
Rob, you might want to mention, we have a semi parked in our parking lot out here. What do we do with that?
If you'll notice, there's a semi-trailer parked out here on our lot here to the north, and it's an educational campaign. It's called Truck Smart. We go around to schools, we go around to other places, and try to have people understand how you're supposed to drive around those trucks. They can't stop on a dime. They have a limited sight distance in some instances, and so we're trying to educate the public, and teenagers especially that may not be familiar with driving around big trucks, how important it is to be careful, give them space. Just like our snow plows, there's a lot going on in those big rigs, and we need to make sure that people understand that.
Mr. Chairman, this is great information. I would think that we ought to thank the drivers of Utah, get a press release out and kind of show them what our actual numbers are and use it to our advantage.
That's a great idea. Okay, here's our suspected serious injury rate on Utah's roadways. And again, we are the lowest we've ever been on this one as well. So fewer people are dying as a percentage, and also being seriously injured, which can be a life-changing thing for folks that are in automobile accidents. So this is also a very good trend. One of the last thing I want to, this is our crash rate. I'll pick that up real quick and talk about that, and then I've got one more slide. Again, you can see that even our crash rates, even though they've gone up slightly in the last few years, overall the trend is encouraging and we're way down. And as you can see here, this is our crash rate per 100 million vehicle miles traveled, and it's still low, but actually the trend is kind of going in the wrong direction. We've had a lot of discussions about why this is and why we're seeing crashes higher, And hopefully, some of the safety things we've done out on our roadways are reducing the severity of those crashes, but there are still a lot of crashes happening. So, the very last thing I'd like to show you is one of the specific things that we've done on roadways to help us to reduce the serious injuries and fatalities, and that is our cable barrier, and specifically in the medians. And if you look at this graph, and it goes back to 1998, that was, you can see we started to install cable barrier in the median. I think this was the first instances we had were down in Region 3 on I-15 before it was reconstructed. But we started to install that in 2002-ish. And you can see the amount of cable barrier is the green line that we've installed throughout the state in the median. And this is to prevent the crossover crashes, which are very severe, very tragic, and lead to a lot of serious injuries and fatalities. And as you see, as we have increased the number of miles of cable barrier, our crossover crashes have dropped. Not crashes, serious injury and fatalities have come down almost in correlation, almost in exact correlation to the amount of barrier. When I looked at this a few weeks ago for the first time, and we understood, and our gut feel was, yeah, this is going to make a difference. So I didn't realize how big of a difference it's going to make. So back in 2000, our rate was hovering around 200 of these per year that would be seriously injured or killed because of crossover crashes. And now we're down to just a handful of folks each year that die this way because of the or are seriously injured because of we've installed the cable barrier. So I think this is a really good sign that the things that we're doing out on the road are making a difference and saving lives and preventing serious injuries. So,
what's really amazing to me on that is not only is the savings of life, but even the savings of costs that you can just, as I understand, as Rob, as we've talked about, you can generally pull one of those, and the sleeves are there and replace it, stretch the cable compared to having to take the post and redesign. And so, I mean, it actually saves lives, and it's actually very cost effective.
It's a really simple mechanism to do that, and but it is very, very effective.
Very effective.
So it's something we're going to continue to do.
Mr. Chair. I applaud the information and congratulate UDOT on these successes. Lou will laugh at this, but the one that shows the fatality rate dropping like this, it looks just like Utah's fertility rate. So correlation is not causation in that case.
True.
The comment that I would make is when I see data like this, I intuitively think about the future and what gains can you make in the future. And what becomes very interesting is our age structure is changing so dramatically in the state. And so a thought that I would just share with UDOT is to the degree that you can involve age structure in what you're doing here, especially as you look forward. What are the behaviors of millennial drivers? What are the behaviors of senior drivers? Two interesting categories there. It might tell you something about where we're headed and how to be preventative, rather than reactive to that age structure.
And we have talked about that in our Zero campaign, and some of the main thing that we've talked about is the use of the smartphones and how that's changing and how those are something that my millennial children and I think even those that aren't millennials, we see that everywhere. Yeah. And what does that mean, and how is that going to change driver behavior? That's something that we're very, very concerned about, and that's part of our Zero campaign and education is making sure that people are putting those phones down while they're driving. Yeah. That's something I stress with my kids. I can't guarantee that they always listen. They're adults now, and so they have minds of their own. But that's a very good point.
Yeah. Well, and the really interesting thing about it is. We have projections by single year of age in our state, and you think that it's just a constant, but we have varying births, varying migration, varying number of women of childbearing age, and so you get age waves and things, and so you actually have a lot of intelligence that could tell you what the future might look like.
Okay, Mr. Chairman?
Yes, please.
I really appreciate Commissioner Gochner bringing that up. I mean, we can slice the data. We have the data based on where the different types of crashes with the different ages. One of the things we're recognizing is our drivers are becoming older. We're seeing a larger group of older drivers out there. And so we're looking at, do we need to make the signs bigger, things such as that to help facilitate that older driving. So it's a very, I think it's a comprehensive and a complex discussion because there's a lot of moving pieces on this.
Yeah,
But I really appreciate that.
Yeah, thank you, Carlos. At our data at the Gardner Institute, we estimated how many centenarians we have in the state right now, and it's something, you know, like just under 400 centenarians in our state. By 2065, it grows to about 5,200.
I saw that,
And it
I
just
saw that
gives you a
in
sense.
a news story.
Yeah, because it was aging and living longer.
Yeah.
I
And
hope we're
that's-
all there.
And we've got a plan for all, you know, what does that mean for the driving public? Are they going to be driving? And I think people are living not only longer, but they're living healthier and able to be more active at later ages, so. Any more questions?
2065, 50 years down.
Go ahead, please.
Just to comment back on when you were showing all the accidents, the highs, I'd like you to notice that in the 60s, those of us that are in high school contributed to a lot of those, and that we've improved.
Yeah, I wasn't even here. Thank you, Rob. Thank you very much.
Very, very interesting.
Next agenda item is grants update, and Ben is going to present that one.
Thank you and good morning, Commissioners, Mr. Chair. So this agenda item is to go over our UDOT grant information. It's been a busy month for grants relative to previous months. So I'll touch on, I believe we've got 6 items to cover for information for the Commission. So this first item here is an Accelerated Innovation Deployment or AID grant. This is a program that FHWA has that has a rolling open deadline. We've done these in the past, mostly through project development, I believe. And this specific grant is for advancing digital construction and data capture. So it has to do with technology, use of technology for capturing asset information during construction. It dovetails on some previous work that we've done in digital delivery. And this one has a associated programming item that you'll see later in the agenda with respect to the amount. I think we've labeled it as a contingent or conditional request for approval if we were to get this grant. I think we've been fairly successful in the past, so hopefully it's a high likelihood on this grant. So there'll be more information in the programming items on this one. The next grant is the one that Ivan Marrero talked about with the truck parking. So I guess my lesson learned for this is on my spreadsheet, don't delete anything because you never know when 8 years later you're going to just get a grant that gets awarded. So we've listed some information here. It's at this point, I would say it's somewhat preliminary, and there will likely be a commission item next month to deal with any commission approval or programming approvals on this item. So this is that Echo truck parking, new rest area type parking on I-80. So we've listed the preliminary information here, but this might change as they work out the details with the match and the scope on that project for next month. I believe Ivan Marrero also mentioned this notice of funding opportunity. This grant is Surface Transportation System Funding Alternatives. The Technology and Innovation Group at UDOT is leading on this one, and it's related to the road usage charge. There's been a previous award to UDOT in this category, and like Ivan mentioned, there's 2 pending applications that we've discussed in previous commission meetings. So they're working, this one, the status on this one is application development, so they're working on this one. And if there is any needed commission action, we would bring that for approval at the appropriate time on that one. There was also a notice this past couple weeks of Department of Homeland Security preparedness grant opportunities. And this one, there was actually 8 separate grant program announcements. And so I've listed it here. our operations group is digging into those different grant programs to determine if there's anything that we would potentially have that would be eligible. So here again, I've listed it as a placeholder, and if there would be something that we would find would be eligible and need a commission action, we'll come back and talk about that one. Oh, and I skipped one. I was going to say there's something. Okay, so sorry, I'm going to jump back down to this this US 40 infra grant right here. So there's an Infrastructure for Rebuilding America grant. This one came out, and normally these have a approximately 3-month turnaround time from the time between the notice of funding opportunity and the submission deadline. This one came out in the middle of last month, and it has a very tight turnaround on it. And so we took a look at that one, and we had a previous infra grant submission for a US 40 project that there was a recent debrief on, and that one made it, it did very well in the, we would resubmit that one with some slightly updated information, and hopefully that one would compete well. So that one, we've listed the project estimate amounts, and that is another one where if we were to get the grant, we would come back to the commission to ask for any necessary approvals to add that project and any needed match funding for that. So I apologize for skipping that and getting out of order.
Yeah, because that has a...
This would be for a climbing lane leaving Heber headed to Park City, right?
Yeah, that's what this one is. Yep.
This is adding a 3rd lane climbing there.
Yes.
So the trucks can race each other.
From Mayflower interchange going up the hill.
Yeah, and I think that was one of the criteria in this grant category that made this a good candidate, is because there's a heavy freight component to this grant criteria, and also some safety elements there with some of those movements.
I think, personally, that's a very needed addition to the system, because there's a lot of traffic through there during rush hour. It's not uncommon to see Heber Main Street backed up through all the lights, and most of it's going from Provo to Park City and back, and so it's something that we've just outgrown that highway, and with the truck traffic, it would be a huge safety benefit.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. I do want to highlight the match amount. This was, I think, a 40% required match amount. It is a large amount of money, so we wanted to make sure that it came in front of the commission. It's nice to bring, quote, new money into the state, but it's also going to require a little bit of balancing. If we get this, the commission ultimately has the decision of whether or not you want to approve that. We're anticipating a little over $9 million.
Thank you. So let me get back to, after I skip that one, so I think there's one more. So this, just this past week, there was a build grant announcement, notice of funding opportunity. This is a grant program that we've submitted for before. So I've listed this one here as a placeholder, and our status is we're going to re-review the criteria, make sure that we're up to speed if there's been any changes on the criteria, and then identify potential projects, and then we would bring anything needed back to the commission on this one also. So with the way this week's going, I'm not positive that there hasn't been some additional grant announcements since I've been up here. So if there are some more, I'll add them to the list.
Okay.
So any questions on any of those?
I guess you're doing another episode of the capacity projects. Are you presenting that?
Yes.
Go ahead, please.
Okay, thank you. We'll jump right into that one. Do you know which one that is? That one. Perfect. Thank you, Heather. Refresh this, I think. There we go. Magic. So this month we just have just a few items to touch on. Last month we brought the nomination lists for active transportation, transit, and transit first mile, last mile in those eligible project types. Last month we had preliminary eligibility determinations for the projects that were nominated in those categories. And so the only update we have at this month is the final eligibility determinations. And so I'll just quickly go through those. There were, on the active transportation, there were no changes from what we presented last month. So all of them minus one were eligible for the program based on the criteria in the statute and the rule. And so that list is now final. I guess before I touch on the other ones, just to touch on the next steps for this. Now we're in the mode of gathering the information from the submitter, the data that's needed to complete the model run that would rank these projects, and we're targeting next month to bring the ranked list for these project types. So the next one is on the transit nomination list. This one, last month, there was one project on here that was pending additional information. It was this top one here, and that one we worked with the submitter and got the necessary information, and that one has been updated with an eligibility determination. And the rest of the eligibilities did not change from what was presented last month. And then the last one is the first and last mile. These eligibility determinations did not change from what was the preliminary information presented last month. So this information is all updated on the project prioritization website under the Transportation Commission section of the website. For now, we've left it in there as each commission has its own section, so you can kind of follow along with the progress from month to month. Like I mentioned, our next steps are to provide rank lists on these three eligible project types. And then as we go into our workshop that we're going to be doing for the next few months, we're going to start bringing the projected revenues for these programs and using these decision support tools to come up with funding recommendations. Is there anything else that we need to talk about for prioritization?
Any questions from Ben? Thank you. Good job.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Okay, item number 7 and 8 will be presented by Ivan Harder.
Good morning, thank you. To begin the discussion with the consent agenda, one thing that Chairman Zanotti asked that we highlight is at the end of every consent agenda that we've presented, after the minutes is this section that goes through and talks about the different programming items that UDOT has, the different buckets of money, types of funds, things like that. But it also carries a balance. So on this one in particular, at the bottom, after it reviews each of the programs, it gives us a total returning value. So in this commission, we'll be returning just shy of $7 million, and a balance available to after return, and the amount programming. So we're bringing back $7 million to our programs, and today we'll be asking permission to program $11.6 million. What this does is it highlights the different programs that we have. We've talked a lot about the transportation solutions, which this section here talks about each region, the balances. If there's a pending action, both returning and programming, today we have our statewide programming item. Ben talked a minute ago about the aid grant, the $250,000. That's this particular item here. You'll see it's a pending programming item, and that's how this sheet can easily be read to see how much in total are we going to be talking about for our programming items.
Just want to have a new commissioners to see these items and the savings that comes from each region. So it's really complimented. Thank you. So with that explanation, I would like to have a motion to approve the item A and B.
I'll make that motion.
And I'd second.
Okay, there's a motion and a second. Any other questions, corrections? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Item number 7 is approved. Thank you.
Thank you. Item 1 today is up in Garden City, the US 89 Garden City Escape Truck Ramp. During the construction phase of this project, it was determined that the right-of-way that was needed, the right-of-way funding that was needed for this project was more than originally estimated. Due to the scope, or due to the extent of the slope easements based on
this ramp. The slope easement, just to explain what that is the impact fees paid to the property owner from the department to build supporting slopes on their property. The department actually does not own that property. It's just, we're using it to build that supporting slope. It was determined at this location that we either needed to have a longer ramp or the additional features to be included to stopping the vehicle's momentum. The Region 1 determined the preference would be to provide a concrete apron which would guide the vehicle into the optimum location and a more dense restraint system rather than to seek additional right-of-way. So our request today is a motion to approve $1 million of Transportation Solutions funding to be added to this project here. Located here, just to show that design located over, as a map overlay.
I have a question on that. Have they identified where that's going?
This is really an important project. We've had several crashes into Garden City there at the T-junction. And so this has been badly needed for a long time. I think there were issues with the property acquisition, but that's been resolved now. So I'm happy to make a motion that we approve this.
And I'd second that. So this looks like, I'm just looking, this looks like right before the storage units, before the Chevron. As you go down the hill, I'm just trying to get a visual, and there at the left is the road where you go into Bridgerland, where I have a home. So I'm familiar with this. I just hadn't heard where it was going to be, so this is good to see where you're going to put this ramp. Thanks.
Okay, there's a motion and a second. Any further questions?
It's just right up in there, yeah.
See none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Item number 1 is approved.
Thank you. Item number 2 is located at our Legacy Highway. It's a SR67 cable barrier. This project will construct a cable barrier between the outside lane of traffic and the existing Legacy Trail in various locations. The new cable barrier will provide a positive separation between vehicular traffic and the trail in specific locations. So map here just shows the length of Legacy, but the region will be identifying these specific locations to add the cable barrier. Our request today is a motion for approval to add the SR67 cable barrier various locations project to the Region 1 Transportation Solutions Program as detailed.
What is the minimum standard for the separation?
I'm going to phone a friend on this one. Nathan's going to come up.
We've done an analysis of the, Nathan Peterson, Region 1 Program Manager. I'm here for Lisa Wilson today. The region has gone ahead through our design staff and has analyzed the corridor, the roadway, and wherever that trail starts to get within about 50 feet, plus or minus, of that outside shoulder, those are areas that we have identified. Now, there's several areas that are much farther in separation distance than that. Those areas we would not place the cable barrier, but it's whenever we approach within plus or minus 50 feet.
Thank you, Nathan.
Okay.
So state the motion, please. Ivan.
Our request today is a motion for approval to add SR67 cable barrier various locations project to the Region 1 Transportation Solutions Program as detailed.
Move for approval.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any further discussions? Questions? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Number 2 is approved.
Thank you. Item number 3, in West Jordan, this is a Wasatch Front Regional Council project in combination with the West Jordan City. The scope of this project is to widen 1300 West through West Jordan to add a center turn lane and right turn lanes at several intersections, improve the traffic operations. It will also include some active transportation features such as bike lanes, sidewalks, curb and gutter. This additional funding will come from the Salt Lake County Regional Transportations Fund, the fourth quarter choice fund. This funding addition was approved at the Wasatch Front Regional Council on January 23rd, 2020. So again, just to highlight, this is local government funding that we'll be adding to this project. Located here on a map with 1300 West. Our request today is a motion for approval to add $3,115,200 of local government funding to the 1300 West, 6600 South to 9400 South project as detailed.
I'll make the motion to approve this.
Second.
There's a motion and a second on item number 3.
Thank you.
Any further questions? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Number 3 is approved.
Thank you. Item number 4, located in Region 3. We have a couple of moving parts on this motion, this request. The first part, we have three projects in close proximity to each other: the I-15 Payson area cross slope, the I-15 northbound Payson Main to Benjamin Ponding Fix project at the Benjamin intersection, and the SR-15, SR-178 Payson to SR-156 Spanish Fork, Maine. Our request today will be to combine these 3 projects together, do a project combination, and then we also have a funding addition request for the scope of the 3 projects now combined into one. There's explanation of what each project will be, but I'll skip down to this one, which is the 16550. This would be the pin that we would consolidate the funding and scope into for our 2022 construction season. Region 3 proposes to add $2.3 million of transportation solution funding in order to advance the project into the 2021 year. Region 3 will combine these other projects and scopes together. By combining these projects, we'll have a single contractor coordination, have less impact to the traveling public, and we expect more competitive bids because of the larger project. Located here on our map, Spanish Fork into Payson. Our request today is a motion for approval to add funds to the I-15 SR-178 Payson to SR-156 Spanish Fork, Maine project and combined projects as detailed.
I'd review this with Rob and Kevin and others. I move for approval, like Natalie said, more construction, but we're moving it further south. We're getting away from
I'll second the motion.
It's a motion and a second on item number 4. Any further questions? Discussions? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Number 4 is approved. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next item is also a project combination. Back in May of last year, the department approached the commission to request approval to add a project, the Provo Canyon Wall Repair project in Provo Canyon. You probably remember these pictures that we showed scrolling down here. The region has advertised this project twice and received no bidders for this project. There's a project close to this also up Provo Canyon that has similar scope, that today our request will be to add these 2 projects together. I'm scrolling back up. This pin 17613, this is the one that we've received no bidders. Pin 15571 is a transportation solutions project that is repairing large portions of walls along the Provo Canyon. This project has been awarded and the contractor is willing to add the work from the pin stated above and handle that through a change order. Combining these projects will allow that smaller section to be repaired.
So what was the cause of the erosion at the first place, and are you going to match the same structure?
And I'll let Matt come and talk to us.
So the cause, Matt Parker, Region 3 Program Manager. So the cause of the erosion, it was just erosion from water coming over the top, and it's a MSE wall, so they're just kind of concrete blocks. And so what happened there is they just started falling off, and we don't really have a way to fix it other than through this. And so we're just going to replace it back with what it has, and then we're going to put a little bit of a curb along there to block the water from going over the top there.
Okay. Thank you, Matt. There's a motion and a second on item number 5. Any further discussions, questions? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Number 5 is approved.
Now it's working, and it's been, it keeps getting worse.
Our next item, item number 6, US 89 Glendale to Large Wash, the funding and scope removal. Located in Region 4. During the 2019 STIP workshop, Region 4 requested that a pavement rehabilitation and a highway safety improvement project adding 4-foot asphalt shoulders be combined into one pin due to the projects being in the same location and like construction items. Our Highway Safety Improvement Fund funding of $1.4 million was identified for the shouldering with a competitive cost benefit ratio. Detailed designs of this 4-foot shoulder widening in Glen Canyon is now estimated at 5 times more than the original projected cost for this. The main challenge in this area is wet and poor soil conditions to support these shoulders. Region 4 recommends that the Highway Safety Improvement Funds and scope be removed from this project and returned to to the safety program and reallocated using the cost benefit process for project considerations. Region 4 will do a separate concept study to get a better scope and estimate for the asphalt widening. This new project will then be included in the region's future transportation solutions list. Located here on a map along 89 north of Glendale. A couple of pictures that show the roadway. Our request today is the approval to remove funding and scope to the US 89 Glendale to Large Wash project as detailed.
Rick, would you please explain a little bit more on this project, why the cost is higher and the cost benefit? Welcome back, Jason.
Thank you.
You don't even have a bloody nose. What did you do?
You know, they love me up there on the hill, what I tell you.
Go ahead, Rick.
Rick Torgerson, Region Director for Region 4. Yeah, the HSIP, like you were presented here probably a month ago or 2 months ago, we use cost benefit ratio to establish kind of where we put those HSIP funds. Shouldering, we have done shouldering projects. We're doing some work on SR 59 between Hurricane and Hilldale, and we did some west of Cedar City. We were hoping we could use that same concept in Glendale Canyon, but as our design got out there, the whole roadway is very saturated and would take a lot more work to build the shoulders than what we needed to do on a couple of those other routes. So when we noticed that, we would only get maybe a mile of the 5 miles worth of shouldering that was identified in the original scope. So we feel it's appropriate. We do need to treat the pavement in here. It's due for a treatment, so that was why we were trying to combine them together at the same time. But we need to look at this a lot closer with drainage and cut slopes and maybe even right away and a few things in this canyon to actually get good 4-foot shoulders in this section.
Thank you, Rick.
So, for a motion so moved that we.
I'll second.
With adjustment.
There's a motion and a second on the item number 6. Wait a minute.
6.
Did we go back to number 7?
We noticed that there's our packet is out of order with
Okay.
with the list.
This is number 9, item number 9, and your agenda item. Okay? So there's a motion and a second on item number 9. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Number 9 is carried.
Is the agenda item on the screen, but it's item 6 on the agenda. Region 4, the I-15 Black Ridge to Iron County, that our request is to add funds, transportation solutions funds to this project. The original scope of this project was to provide an asphalt overlay on I-15 northbound from approximately milepost 34 to 37.5 and southbound from 34 to 42.5. This will still happen. However, Region 4 would like to add scope to address a surface course and seal on the Black Ridge. In normal situations, the water flows from the crown of the road to the shoulder. However, because of the steep, long grade of the Black Ridge, water tends to flow down the lanes of travel before getting to the shoulder. This causes an increased buildup of precipitation on the lanes of travel. In order to reduce the accumulation of water on the surface and to change the hydroplaning, Region 4 is proposing to add an open grade surface course treatment to both the northbound and southbound I-15 milepost, as you see, approximately 27 to 37.5. This open graded surface course is a seal coat that allows water to drain into the pavement layer and then be drained to the shoulders instead of allowing sheeting water across the surface of the pavement. This request also will address and replace concrete barrier and guardrail to comply with the new MASH standards, the Manual for Assessing Safety Highways standard, or hardware standard.
I'll make the motion on this
I'll
project.
second.
There's a motion and a second on this item. You
Can
have
I ask a question? Yeah, is this the resolution, I'm looking at you, Rick, is this the resolution for, where we had 2 trucks go off the road in just a couple of days? Is this that piece of highway?
Yes, we had 8 in about 5 weeks.
8 in 5 weeks?
Yeah.
Oh, okay,
Yeah,
I only
we
saw
had
2
quite
personally, so
Yeah,
that's how much I'm on that highway.
Yeah, this is exactly in that section where we had those challenges, and we've since went out with a grind to change the friction course on that roadway a little bit in that section, since then have not had any more accidents. We do have a pretty good rainstorm coming this weekend, and we have VMS boards being mobilized into that area just to try to get people to slow down and slow their speed going down that when in rainy conditions. And most of those truck accidents, well, all of them, the highway patrolmen were telling us it was speeds greater than the conditions as they were driving down the Black Ridge. But this will certainly help try to get that water off the roadway. It's certainly in heavy rain conditions, they'll still saturate that open graded surface course and still have water, but for lower rain events, this should get a lot of the water off of that surface is our plan.
This is all still part of it's still 80 miles an hour during that,
Yes.
for that whole stretch, right? So
Yep.
it's just people
Through the
being
canyon.
mindful of when it's wet, slow down.
Yes.
Okay.
Drive the conditions, the speed appropriate for the conditions, and we had several of those trucks that were going very fast in a pretty good rain events. And then they tapped their brakes and lost control, and yeah, it was a tough situation there, so.
Thank
Mr.
Yes,
Chairman?
go ahead.
Rick, didn't we ask the commission for money to add a VMS sign
Yes.
to
Yes,
help
we
with this
did.
as well
Yes,
earlier? I just
last
wanted
month.
you-
Last month at milepost 40, so that we can actually put a VMS board up there and give live information right prior to the canyon. But in the meantime, we're mobilizing a trailer-mounted unit up there today to give information relative to the storm event this weekend.
Question. Just a quick question as part of education and being on the commission. Is your chance of hydroplaning increase with speed?
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
I thought that was true. And then VMS,
Variable message board.
variable message, okay.
Yep.
So what is the shelf life of the OGSC?
So the OGSC is a material that it's really open graded, so the water will go down in it and then run across the road with the grade of the asphalt underneath it. But you know, they usually last 7 to 9 years, something like that, and then we will have to remove that. You can't just overlay it again, because then you end up with a very stripped layer underneath, buried underneath your current asphalt. So, you know, usually when you put OGSC down, when you come to take it, you have to take that layer off and put another layer back down.
Okay, thank you. So with that explanation, you have any other questions? All in favor on this motion, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That is approved, thank you.
Thank you. Our next item on the agenda, 8A7, is the SR10 Clawson Intersection Improvements Project. This is the city Clawson Township in Emery County. I'm going to talk through on the map real quick, to show what this project's going to do, and then we'll talk through the wording below. In the city of Clawson, we have several different intersections on the highway here. This particular project, the proposal is to close these intersections on the red dots on the map. So you'll have an entrance into the city on the south end. These ones on the east side will be closed, and then a new intersection up here at the top will be constructed, as well as a taper, basically a widening of the pavement, a center turn lane through this project. This is what it looks like right now. The current intersection, you'll see it comes here at an angle, intersects into the highway. Clawson Town of Region 4 has approached Region 4 to partner with this turn lane project. Milepost 30.8 work will include constructing the southbound deceleration lane, extending the existing center turn lane section south into the intersection, and adding a new local access north of the existing access. Clawson Town has agreed to remove 3 existing Access is to ensure a safe corridor for ingress and egress of the town. Work will include earthwork for roadway widening, paving, signing, striping, and drainage improvements. Region 4 will manage this project as requesting $625,000. Clawson Town and the Castle Valley Special Service District will fund the additional $250,000.
Go ahead, please.
I'd like to make the motion on this one. Quick question. Clawson is in Emery County, correct?
Correct.
So Emery County is one of only 4 counties in our state that is contracting right now. You know, that is one of the silent recession counties. And despite that difficulty, there's a bright future because of a lot of investment occurring. And I think this would be very consistent with that. And I'm just really excited to see the town getting this attention.
Second. I had a question about where, is it by Castle?
Bill, where is Clawson? I've learned a new city today, or town I didn't know about. So where, just whoever can tell me, just geographically, roughly, just what it's by some of the other communities around there?
Yeah, so once you leave Farron, and you go north of Farron, it's
Okay.
between Farron and Castledale.
Okay, thank you.
Yep, maybe 5 or 6 miles north of Farron.
I know where Castledale is, so that
Yep.
helps. Thanks.
So, Rick, don't go, do we have a written agreement then with the city of Clawson abandoning this 3 intersection?
There's a letter attached in here
Oh, okay.
from the city
So-
council, so, yeah, I guess if we scroll down, you can see the letter that we received from the town supporting the project and the $250,000. And that they'd like to close those intersections. They had a town hall meeting, right, Monty, on the whole
Yeah.
thing? I should let Monty answer all this.
With that one.
Yeah, give us the details of agreement.
So yes, so what
Introduce
predicated this?
Introduce yourself, please. Your name.
Oh, I'm sorry, Monty Aldridge, Region 4, Deputy Director. Yes, what predicated this is the Special Service District built the county road on the north end, if you looked at that map. And when they did that, it gave them an opportunity to look at reducing the number of intersections. As you mentioned before, those are on a skew, which makes sight distance a challenge and made it a much safer situation. So they approached us and we worked with the mayor, and then the mayor also engaged with the city council and held a town increasing the center turn lane to provide them with a safer manner to egress and ingress into their properties. And so that resulted in the recommendation coming from the town council in this letter here to close the intersections and participate in the project to widen the highway.
So you're gonna give them the frontage road to get to the access to their properties?
Not a frontage road, it's just gonna have a wider shoulder and a
Just
center turn
exactly,
lane, a
okay.
permissive center turn lane.
Okay. Any further question? Then I will say aye in favor.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Our next item, 8A8, is SR 17 Chola Drive turn lanes located in Tocqueville. It's a new project, a transportation solutions project for $300,000, located along the map here. Here's a picture of where the project location. Tocqueville City has approached Region 4 to partner with this turn lane project at milepost 1.3 on SR 17. Residential development continues to grow rapidly in this area with increasing traffic volumes on SR 17 and turning movements into this city street. Work will include constructing a southbound deceleration lane, northbound deceleration lane, an acceleration lane, and work will include the roadway widening, earthwork, paving, drainage improvements, and utility relocation. Tocqueville City will manage this project and fund an additional $300,000. This city will be required to build these improvements to the UDOT standards, including quality control of the project. UDOT's area engineer will oversee the construction.
Okay.
There's also is a letter from Tocqueville City from the mayor talking or making that commitment on their behalf. Okay, to hear. Our request today is a motion for approval to add SR 17 Chola Drive turn lanes project to Region 4's Transportation Solution Program as detailed.
There's a motion and a second. Any other further discussion, question on this project?
I do have a question.
Go ahead, please.
Most of the time when we see these, we see the municipality or the county providing the monies, and we oversee the project. Is that not true? So this seems different to me in that they're going to oversee
Correct.
the project, but it is with a UDOT engineer partner.
Correct. Rick, we'll let Rick talk through how
Okay.
this will work.
Yeah, so like the one you just looked at, the SR10 one, we will manage that. We go both ways. We have developers come in and look at development, and with their development requires turn lanes, we will give them a permit and have them develop that turn lane. So it goes both ways, and in this case, the city really wanted to, they've already have a design completed, they're ready to go. They want to just manage the project, and so we feel very, very comfortable that they have everything in place to do it, and we'll have an oversight engineer, oversee that job for us as well.
That's great. I think it's always important to support as much as we can when communities bring money to the table.
Okay. Any other questions? All in favor, they say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The project is approved. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next item, A810, we've already had some discussion on that this morning on the Northern Corridor, the BLM right-of-way application support. The Transportation Commission previously approved funding for UDOT to partner with Washington County to apply for a permit from the Bureau of Land Management and the Northern Corridor alignment. In order to issue the permit, BLM must prepare an analysis of alternatives in an environmental impact statement. The U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service is a joint lead agency with BLM on this document. The current project value of $2.3 million was intended to pay for the EIS process, including the development of one or two alternatives. BLM and the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Services now believe additional alternatives need to be studied. In order to complete the work, an additional $3.4 million from UDOT and $620,000 of local funds are needed. The requested funding will allow the activities needed to select a preferred alternative and a project as detailed.
I'll move for approval.
Okay, there's a motion and a second. Question?
Just a couple of questions. Do the
It's the HCP, which is the Habitat Conservation Area that Washington County has had in place for 20 years, right, Commissioner Cox?
Yes.
So there's 3 different ones. This one's the one that we put in the right-of-way request for. There's another one that they're calling, what's the north one? Yeah. And then there's one that goes really farther south, right above Red Hills Parkway in St. George. And then there's actually 2 or 3 outside of the preserve. So they actually have analyzed 6 or 7 right now, and they're going through that screening process. And the BLM and Fish and Wildlife are both leading this effort. We are basically a consultant providing information to their studies because we put in a BLM right-of-way request for this highway.
Wasn't there land exchanged as part of this where the tortoise could be relocated? Wasn't there, did I dream about it?
Commissioner
No,
Cox?
that's part of the HCP, and Commissioner Cox can actually answer all the details on that, but yeah.
First, Washington County supported the Washington County Lands Bill, of course, and the Lands Bill is what created the NCA and also directed the Department of Interior to recommend one or more alternatives for the Northern Corridor. But what we're proposing is actually about 58 acres of NCA land that would require the road to pass over it. And so what we're working with, we're partnering with Sitla, is to add almost 7,000 acres of habitat to the HCP, and we surveyed that, and the tortoise density is as thick there and heavy there as it is in the area that we would be running the route. And so we feel that this will not only be responsible 100-to-1 mitigation, but it's also going to protect pristine areas south of St. George, west of Bloomington, from further development and encroachment. And I see this really as a great win-win.
Go
ahead,
One
please.
more follow-up question. Is there much private land along the corridor?
There's a bit of private land, but we've been acquiring it. When the HCP was first created, there was in excess of 10,000 acres of private land. That has diminished now to, I'm thinking about 600 acres. So we've made considerable progress. The burden of acquisition in the HCP rested with the federal government. However, to speed this process along, the county has actually started participating, and we recently put $1 million into purchasing, and then using corridor acquisition funds, we've purchased additional acreage. And so we're making real progress there. In our last commission meeting, we waived any of the property taxes that were on any of those private lands so that it would be easier for us to find resolution on the few that have been out holding. So great progress has been made.
Thank you. Any other questions?
So
Rick,
one
go
more
ahead.
comment. So the goal with these in-holdings is to actually acquire them and make that become part of the NCA so that there is no development opportunities along this route across the BLM section until you get to Green Springs in Washington City. So this whole section would not be developable land.
And the idea is that we need to do this project, Commissioner, this particular time, otherwise we're gonna have the opportunity to last for another 20 years.
Absolutely, this is really time critical, and I think our best opportunity to finish it and get it done.
Okay. Okay. Go ahead.
Our request today is a motion for approval to add funding to the Northern Corridor BLM right-of-way application support project as detailed.
Anyone?
So moved.
Okay. You already did that? Sorry.
I believe so.
Okay, there was a motion.
Even better.
Okay, then, we have a motion and a second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. Number 10 is approved.
Our last item, programming item for today, has been talked about on our grant. Our grant update is the Accelerated Innovation Deployment Demonstration Grant, or the AID grant. It's a new project. Our request, the federal grant is $1 million. Our state construction match $250,000 to give us a project value of $1.25 million. It has been talked about. This is the specifics of what the requirements of the grants are, but our focus is around the collection of data during the construction process. The department seeks contingent approval to provide the required match up to $250,000 should we receive the grant at $1 million from the Transportation Fund construction line item. In the event that a successful response is received, the department will evaluate the grant amount awarded, contribute the required match, identify any change needed to the scope from the amount of funding awarded, and place the project on the same year STIP as the awarded funds received. Our request today is contingent approval to add funds to the Accelerated Innovation Deployment Demonstration Grant as detailed.
Approve.
Okay.
I'll second it and express my enthusiasm for what you're doing here.
With that enthusiasm, we have a motion and a second. All in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? Thank you. Number 11 is approved.
Okay. We have one further item. It's the Airport Capital Investment Plan. It's agenda item 8B. It's for the West Davis Airport Pavement Preservation Project. It's a scope and funding adjustment. It's the West Desert Air Park scope change and reduction. Originally funded as a pavement preservation project, the West Desert Air Park would like to change the scope of their project to fund an airport layout plan prior to any additional pavement work. With this scope change, they will be contributing $3,000 to help fund this plan. So we'll be removing some of our ACIP funding and adding some of their local funding. Located here on our map, west of Utah Lake, south of Eagle Mountain, is the West Desert Air Park. Our request today is the approval to change scope and funding to the West Davis Airport Pavement Preservation Project as detailed.
What kind of planes flying there?
Matt's here.
Anybody?
That's where Facebook will be coming in.
Small ones.
Tyson chicken.
Yeah, good morning, Commissioners. Matt Swap. I'm with the Division of Aeronautics. This is a privately owned public access airport. It's West Desert. Maybe a correction could be made on the name of the project, West Desert Airport, but
Oh, not West Davis?
not West Davis, West Desert. So, yeah, they came on board, since it's public access, they wanted to be able to access some of the state funds for preservation of the runway and such, and some improvements. As it stands, it's not wide enough, and it's not long enough for a lot of the planes are generally the smaller Cessna types planes. So they wanted to be able to get in the queue and start being able to access some of the funds to make improvements. There's a lot of development opportunities around there too. So, as we got into discussions before we wanted to spend any money, we wanted to have a plan in place. So that's what this request was, to have them do an airport layout plan, ALP, and put together a plan, decide where the hangars are going to be, what they need, the spacing and all that. And so, rather than spend money on preservation, the request was to have them do a plan, and then we'll be coming back later to do requests for preservation and other improvements.
Quick question. I'm just not familiar with the term air park. What does that mean?
I'm not really sure. I think there was, go ahead.
I had the same question and asked Jared before our meeting. The difference between an airport and an air park. Air parks allow private residences above the hangars, and airports typically do not.
Wow, that's interesting. Okay. Oh.
Go ahead.
I'd make a motion that we approve this, to let them set back to the planning before they decide, what will actually happen out there.
I'll second that.
With the correction of the West
Desert.
With the correction of not
Airport.
Davis, but it's West Desert
Okay.
there.
Yes,
south
thank you.
of Utah, or west of Utah Lake.
for
where
the record.
mountains are.
Okay. So there's a motion and a second. Any further discussion, questions? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Item B is approved.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ivan. Good job. Okay, there's a break needed at this point, so take your time for a minute. 10 minutes break, is
That's
enough?
awesome.
10 minutes break.
Great idea. Always big on break.
Have under item number 10, 9 rather, A and B, Region 3 and Region 4 reporting. Thank you. Rob?
Thank you, Mr. Chair and Commissioners. It's a pleasure to be here with you this morning, and I appreciate this opportunity to talk about some of the accomplishments in Region 3 using the Transportation Solutions, Region Director Contingency, and Transportation Alternatives Program funds. These funds have a little bit of flexibility in them in that they're not programmed out as far, and they really serve a critical purpose in helping us achieve our strategic goals and working with the communities, and I'll highlight some of those examples this morning. This first project is one that we brought to you recently. This is a signal project in Vernal on 1500 South on US 40. This project wouldn't have been possible without the addition of Transportation Solutions funding. The intersection, you can see it's a skewed intersection. It's about 120 feet to cross it if you're on 1500 South. And combined with the growing traffic, the signal was definitely warranted. The problem was, you can see that white Suburban there is making his maneuver out of the single lane that's available for both through and left turn movements, and that's inefficient from a signal standpoint. And so the improvement necessary is to widen the 1500 South legs to add left turn lanes. And the Transportation Solutions funding was critical. We worked with the county and the city to see if there were local funds available, and they made a good faith effort to come up with those funds, but just weren't able to. And so the funding was a critical stopgap. Here's another example. This is State Street, the bridge over the railroad tracks in Pleasant Grove. This bridge was constructed in 2009, and it had the infrastructure for lighting, but for whatever reason, lighting wasn't installed at the time. And the city approached us and asked if we could work with them and help get lighting installed. We had done an estimate. It was considerably higher than $130,000, and so we had it on our list, but it just hadn't risen to the top. They did some investigation and got some bids, and on their side they determined they were able to do it for much cheaper. And we used contingency, Region Director contingency funds, and they're actually in the process of making this improvement right now. This bridge connects their downtown city center with Shannon Park, which is, they have some ball fields and a playground over there, in addition to their rodeo grounds for their events during Strawberry Days. And so the bridge has some nice separated pedestrian facilities, just lack the lighting. And so in this case, contingency funds were critical in allowing us to work with them, and this shows the work in progress. They'll be finished later this spring.
Is that autonomous bus on the road already?
Yep. So under the goal to optimize mobility, on State Street in between Springville and Provo, there were two segments of bike lanes that were existing on the region's bike plan with this gap on US 89. And we used TAP funds in this instance to upgrade the road in this segment to include buffered bike lanes in both directions. And when you combine this with the improvement that we're currently constructing on 500 West in Provo, you'll be able to travel all the way from downtown Springville to Brigham Young University in buffered bike lanes. So we're starting to develop these facilities that have a high value to the community. In fact, we got some good feedback, so I have to share it because it's so positive. But a member of the biking community was pretty impressed with this improvement, and reached out to us and let us know that. And for the goal of preserving infrastructure, this is another great project on State Route 35 east of Tabiona. This is where the Duchesne River was, it gets in close proximity to State Route 35, and it was eroding away the shoulder area. And we used $350,000 of Transportation Solutions that you programmed, and we're able to make that improvement. The before condition is shown on the left. If you see that gate, that's a gate that was on the right-of-way fence. The rest of the fence is missing. The SR35 is just on the other side of that gate. And so you can see how much of the river had been eroded away. On the after picture, the area that's shown on the left is about where that machinery is in the picture on the right. So there was a significant portion of that bank of that river that had eroded, and it was definitely threatening the road, and we needed to do something. So in this case, these funds allowed us to do a more permanent solution. You can see the shed was doing their best with jersey barrier and rocks, and I mean, they're not going to let it fail without trying. They needed some help. And in this case, it was a bioengineered slope using core, they call that core mats, where the next step after this picture is to plant willows within that burlap mat, and really stabilizes that slope, and it will prevent future erosion. So this was a really good solution that allowed us to preserve State Route 35.
May I just ask, Rob, did you have any trouble getting people to bid on a $350,000 project? Because we had that other problem in Provo Canyon. I'm just curious as
No,
the economics.
This one didn't have that challenge.
Okay, that's good.
Yep.
This one you can work and fish at the same time, that's why.
Yeah. That's not in Provo, I guess, right?
So lastly, I wanted to talk about this Central Corridor Transit Study, and this is an effort that is really a true collaboration between UDOT and the community. In this case, there's 7 cities along the corridor that's pictured there. Lehigh, American Fork, Pleasant Grove, Linden, Orem, Provo, Vineyard. They all got together with MAG and with us and said, we really want to define the future of transit in northeastern Utah County. And MAG contributed most of the funds for this study, and we contributed about $82,000 of the $710 for this study. And the study will identify alternatives in preparation for an environmental study, which would be the next step. But this was really a true collaboration between everyone involved to really define what the future is going to be like, a really proactive step, and it was good that we were able to contribute to that in both a monetary way and through our support and actually leading the study. So.
Quick question on that one,
Yeah.
Go
Mr.
ahead,
Chair.
please.
Just curious, is it the 89 linkage here that would be the focus of that?
So.
US 89?
Right. We're hesitant to presuppose what the solution would be, but 89 is an obvious place to look because it's the only alternate route to I-15 and it's continuous. But later on in the corridor, Geneva Road develops, and that's a possibility, or there could be some kind of express service on I-15. So but 89 would be an obvious place to look.
Thank you.
Yeah. So that brings me to the end of my presentation. Are there any questions?
Go ahead, please.
Mr. Chair, we hear a lot of complaints from people. I was with one of the city managers down there, former city manager, and he just unsolicited said, you need to know how much we appreciate the working relationship with Rob Clayton. And he'd mentioned several of his staff, and just to pass that on publicly, which represents all of you, but just happened to be in a meeting yesterday, and he brought that up towards the end of the meeting. I wanted to pass that on, that they were very grateful for just working on all the different projects that they've worked with on his group, and we're happy for that working relationship. Thought it was going really well.
Yeah. May I rephrase the complaint to passion? They have a lot of passion.
A lot of passion.
And I guess just in conclusion, that we really appreciate these more discretionary funding sources, the ones that allow us to be able to react to these situations and to fill these gaps, and appreciate the opportunity to work with the commission to get those projects programmed and approved. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Good job.
Yeah, Rob, may I just echo that? I was up at the Hill yesterday, the Capitol, and just UDOT's the golden child. that's probably not the right term, but very well liked because of the results and the responsiveness and transparency. So thank you for that
Excellent.
at every level.
Thank you.
Thank you. Rick, you're up.
Thank you, Commission, and like Rob, appreciate the opportunity to stand up here for a few minutes and talk about four different areas, four different type of projects that use these same type of discretionary funds and how it pushes some of our strategic goals of the department. So the first one that I want to show you is what we call a RICWIZ. It's not named after me. It's Rural Intersection Conflict Warning System. So, you know, in southern Utah, obviously, we have a ton of intersections, and we are seeing a ton of these intersections start to get at a level to where turn lanes are needed for the project, or are requested from the local government for turn lanes. But a set of turn lanes right now for us to do all four legs are about $1.5 million, and we have hundreds and hundreds of these across the southern part of the state that everybody wants. So we've been trying to find a solution to address some of these at a lot cheaper rate using technology. And as you guys have had the presentation last month about the Panasonic situation that's coming and how UDOT's trying to engage the technology, this can just enhance that a little bit more. So what these RICWIZ systems are in the zero fatality goal for us is, I'll show you a couple of examples. One is this Diamond Valley intersection. This is north of St. George. Nagia is very aware of this situation that we had at Diamond Valley. We actually had turn lanes at this location and we're still having accidents. And you can see the curve there that comes around. I'm just trying to find the mouse, but the curve that comes down on SR 18, and this is the main road into Diamond Valley, the community over here. So what this system does is it's kind of a smart system. So on the north side and the south side of the intersection, once a car crosses a sensor, this light will, and I think Kevin Kitchen put this in, this light will turn on and start putting a live active sign for the people that are actually sitting at the intersection. You'll see this sign light information if there's a car inside that zone that is what we feel a critical zone for them to not make a decision to pull out in the intersection and have an actual accident. You can see the one on the bottom is at the junction of 89 and 12. This is where you go to Bryce Canyon National Park, and you can actually see that the light is lit on, traffic approaching. So this car stopped at the stop sign, and you can see that the traffic, that van is in the area that we don't want people making the turn, and we're giving them live information. If there's nobody in that area, that sign would not be lit up. It'll just be blank, and then people could make the move. But if there's somebody there, we're actually telling them that we know traffic's in that critical zone. Don't make a decision to pull out in the intersection. So as you see with the Panasonic thing in the future, you know, if we could get those RICWIZs out, or not the RICWIZs, the roadway sensor units out there, we could actually push this information because of the infrastructure we have at these intersections now to the information system of the car and actually talk back to the car and potentially have another level of security at these intersections that people won't go. So we've got 4 of these in place, 2 of them on the 89 corridor, this one at the junction of 89 and 12. We have one at the junction of 89 and 14, which we call the Todd's Junction. 14 goes over the top to Cedar City. So we have one there. We have one over by Minersville and Milford, over there by that intersection. And then we have this one at Diamond Valley. So these 4 locations cost about $400,000. So $100,000 to do this type of information out there relative to the intersections versus a full-blown turning lane scenario that could be $1.5 million times 4. So we feel it's a very innovative thing. We've actually been asked to go to several other states and show them what we've been doing. There's some states, Minnesota's doing a few of these. So we're looking into this more and more and trying to see if this can help us at a very cheap way solve some of our intersection problems in rural Utah. So another one that we had was we brought this to your attention several months ago at Parowan Canyon. And just the flexibility that we have with the Transportation Solutions Funds allowed us to attack this project pretty quick. You can see on the pictures here, this is, you know, the Bryan Head Fire was, 3 years ago now. And we are still dealing with aftermaths of the Bryan Head Fire. And this is a pretty large culvert. You know, it's a 11-foot diameter culvert. underneath Highway 143 that goes up to Bryan Head, and you can see the water lines. It was running pretty high level for quite a while. And then when it lowered, we inspected this culvert and found something we didn't want in that culvert. It was a big gaping hole, and the water had actually disappeared halfway through the culvert and then came back up at some other location. We were very concerned about this, and quickly got to the commission for $230,000. And this is it's complete now. And so basically what we did with a procurement contract, went in and poured a new concrete floor, filled in all those voids. Well, we took the water out of the culvert for as quickly as we could, tried to get the water relocated, dried everything out, cleaned everything out, poured a new concrete floor in the bottom of it, and then sprayed a 2-inch concrete liner through the entire culvert to reestablish that culvert. So a really quick thing, or we could have had a catastrophic failure if that culvert would have collapsed and we lose SR 143. Another project we funded probably a couple years ago now was the $6.5 million project to add passing lanes on SR 9. These quotes in here from Mayor Stan Smith of Springdale, and who drives that corridor a lot, obviously back to St. George and stuff. So we asked him how, recently how the passing lanes in this corridor has helped him, and he gave us some pretty good quotes of what he's seen along the corridor. He's actually saying it's just as great as an impact on travel and safety as the major rebuild that we just completed in the town of Springdale. He says the long queue lines are a thing of the past. I can't express the gratitude I and others have for these 2 passing lanes. So we added 2 westbound passing lanes and 1 eastbound passing lane, and extended another eastbound passing lane for $6.5 million of Transportation Solutions funds on this corridor. And you've seen this chart in the past, that it was $2.5 million or so, and it's up to $4.5 million in today's numbers for visitation to the national park. And what we've seen when we kind of run our numbers here is, we can hold consistent speeds now along the corridor. I don't know if we had a prior one, but since the passing lanes was in place, we've been able to hold, even with the variation of vehicles per hour, we're holding a pretty consistent traffic speed, because now people aren't traveling and following that motorhome that's going 30 miles an hour up the canyon and creating long queues, and then people start making decisions that they shouldn't make. Another project that we like to highlight was the pedestrian underpass, and you can see that happy guy right there. When we kicked off this, I had an opportunity to MC this event, and this was the opening of the 400 South Undercrossing. Once we were able to see the partnership arrangement between Dixie State, the Dixie MPO, and St. George City, and then UDOT's Transportation Solutions money, we added this culvert pretty quick underneath I-15, and was able to open it prior to opening of Dixie State in August. So the culvert was actually in place and open for the kids to use. So Dixie State's right here on 7th East, and as most of you have seen, and we'll probably show you a little bit of this on the tour next month in St. George, but a lot of residential places where kids stay on this side, and then as well as the hospital, and a lot of classes over on the hospital side. So we had a lot of pedestrian movement in this area, and as well as a lot of people jumping in their cars just to drive over to the hospital. And obviously at River Road and St. George Boulevard interchange, we don't need any more cars in that location. So we feel like this is actually drawing down some of that really local movement, and actually providing an active transportation path for them to be safe. Yeah, absolutely. It's bike, it's scooters, it's everything. The city is estimating right now between 300 and 500 pedestrians a day, whether that's on scooters or bikes. So it's a pretty good number, after it's been open. But the partnership was very successful here. We had 1.4 million of UDOT, and then 600 of St. George City, 600 of Dixie State, and 200,000 of the Dixie MPO. So a great partnership between all entities. This, I-15 bisects St. George as it goes right through there, and any opportunity to bring active transportation and connect people outside of cars is a very key piece for Mayor Pike and St. George. So yeah, it was a great event, and it's being used, and everybody's really pleased with the efforts of getting that culvert in place. And there's kind of the last little view of the culvert. So that's all I have, showing 4 projects that really help us with local needs as well as our 3 strategic goals. So I appreciate the opportunity, and like Rob said, the opportunity to have that transportation solutions funding is available to meet these needs and partner with locals.
Rick, would you please tell us the length and the height and the width of the tunnel, if you
So the
remember?
culvert's, I think, 16 feet wide, and I think it's about 12 feet tall. And it's about 280 feet long, I think is the number that goes, because we had to span both lanes of the freeway and the median of the freeway, and even the future 3-lane section that we had identified, so we don't have to do anything to this when the future comes through. So it's a pretty long section. Obviously, St. George City come in and put the lights in and had a lot of betterment money in with it as well. They put the light system and the security system and the cameras and all that type of stuff to make sure that this thing is safe when users are using it.
Cool. So prior to this passage, it was either get in a car and drive around
Or go down to 7th South or 1st South, which was kind of out of the way. So I think a lot of the kids just jumped in their car if they had a car and drove around. But with Mayor Pike and those folks down there, they've brought in all the scooters and the e-bikes and all that stuff, and it's really opening up a different way of moving around St. George than they've had in the past. So.
Any other questions from Rick? Thank you. Good
Yep.
job.
Thank you.
Okay, that concludes our meeting agenda. Next meeting will be in the March 26, 27 in sunny St. George / Washington City. I think we have made arrangement for the meeting on the Thursday in Dixie Center. I think we have reserved room, right, Rick? And then the meeting actually will be in the Washington City Hall.
Yep, and Mr. Chairman, so that really, March and April really forms the, that's the backbone of our commission workshops. We've been working now over the last year, getting the needs and condition reports from all of our groups and regions. And we'll have, that workshop March, then we'll do the tour, and then commission meeting on that Friday. And then in April, we have the next workshop portion. We do that usually here. And so those are a little bit more of a work session. They tend to be a little more casual, so that it's more of a dialogue that we have between the commission and any of the UDOT folks.
Yes.
Mr. Chair.
Go ahead.
What time, just for planning purposes, what time do we envision we'll probably start on Thursday? Just to know what time to be there by? I mean, just a ballpark, are we? Is it like?
Heather's given me the 10.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because we want to do the tour, and a couple commissioners will be needing to travel. After that workshop will not be joining us on the tour. And then, but will be joining us back for the commission meeting on Friday.
By mid-morning to be there.
Yes.
Okay.
Does that nap?
Some people like me get up and drive those early. I just need to know what time I need to be there by.
I think Heather scheduled the plane, and I don't know if you have seats available if you.
Well, yeah, by the time I go up to Salt Lake,
Well, we've stopped before in Utah County
Provo?
to do pickups. Yeah, we could stop in Provo.
Very nice when they do that.
They are. I just like to monitor the freeways that we're building.
Just like
Maybe a little monitoring along with it. Thanks, I'll look into that. Thank you.
Well, thank you.
Could I ask just one question? How is the legacy truck situation playing out generally? Just like maybe an update on that, because that's an item that comes up again and again.
I'm not seeing any Region 1. Chris, have you heard? I mean, yes, there are trucks on Legacy. What I've heard, and again, this is not data yet, we need to let things stabilize out a little bit. We're less than 2 months since that change. But I've heard that the commute on I-15 has gotten better. And, I'm sorry.
Now, I know I'm not data, but to be able to see what was happening on I-15 versus what was happening on Legacy. And Legacy lets particularly the trucks that are going west be so much more efficient in that.
Well, I think the biggest difference has been the speed increase. More people are choosing to use Legacy because of the increased speed. So we went from 55 to 65, but we're going to be looking at the data to see how this has worked out. But we haven't seen, crashes or you know, the road was originally designed at 70 miles an hour and originally designed for trucks, so those two items were concessions to be able to get the project moving forward.
Thank you.
Any other items from the commission?
Mr. Chair,
Yes, go ahead.
I don't know the appropriate time. I attended the, I guess they call it the Regional Growth Commission, what you asked me
Yes.
to serve on behalf of the commission. They had a meeting where the Utah Roadmap, which was a product commissioned by the legislature on air quality in a changing climate. I think at some time in the next 6 to 12 months, it might be something good to share with the commission.
Okay.
It has some transportation recommendations in it.
Okay.
So I don't know the appropriate venue for that, but if the chair and if Carlos think it's appropriate, it might be worth bringing to the commission.
We'll gladly
It'll probably only
consider
take about 15 minutes.
You know, we could work with the Gardner Institute that put that together, and if the commission chair would
That
like
would
to
be
see
great.
that, okay.
Let's do it.
Some of the elements that were contained in there, I think you've seen as part of the governor's budget proposals, trying to move some of those forward. And you know, remind it, you know, so there was an initiative to increase some of the funding going to transit. There has been good discussion about that at the legislature. We're still a little too early to figure out what's going to come out.
And there's only a few days left.
Well, the action starts, you know, so last night they adopted the consensus revenue projection. So really, once that is done, that's really when the financial decisions start to be made going forward. And then the other one was to have the department take the lead in an electric vehicle infrastructure. And that has been received well. Terry's group has put together a plan of what we would do if that's approved. There's also a parallel bill that Representative Spenlove has been running, asking that the department be the lead in that future development. We've been coordinating with Rocky Mountain, who's also working hard in this area as well. So I think those are at least two portions of what those recommendations are. So.
Great. Thank you. That's a good recommendation. Anything from the UDOT? Any new items that we discussed? Concerns
No, sir.
from the public? Okay, I would like to take a motion to adjourn. Then we are done. No contest on that one. Thank you. Have a wonderful day.